Thank you.
Hello.
Nice view. Welcome to our talk, and thank you FITC for having us. I think this is our 5th or 6th year.
4th year.
Coming here. 4th year. My first time was 2006, so I stopped counting at some time. Well, we are a studio. We're based in Brooklyn. We create interactive art installations. And then with that, our work is usually very light-based. And to give you a little bit of an introduction of what we're doing, let's just take a look at that for a second. Fun little experiences for people, and most of them are liked, which is nice. But they all look amazing because working with light means also controlling light. So when you look at these pictures, these look awesome because we completely shut down all the light but the projectors, and the same with this installation. And with that, this is the pinball machine that Zander talked about last year here. We actually made that happen. Did anyone here see that talk? Nice. So it happened, which is pretty amazing. And this is easy. This is screens. The other ones are projections. And if you just make a room really dark, these animations really work well. They look amazing in pictures. And our world is fine. But even in these spaces where we completely control the light, we always run in trouble with projections that run, that reflect onto each other. Sometimes there's an exhibition next door that's really light and it blurs out the projections. And it's just a really, even within spaces, it's sometimes tough to make everything look like you imagine it, because it's not a comp anymore. This is real world and there's real physics. And if you project on a white screen and you want to project black, it's still a white screen. You can't change that. So we are working in an event space, so a lot of people, a lot of clients, they always ask, well, can we bring this project outside? And then our next question is, or we say, sure, but at night, right? And they're like, but what if we can do it also during the day, because then more people can see it? Then you have the problem that the sunlight is the chief ruiner of light-based work, as you can imagine.
It's a fact.
It's true. It's true. So this is what you pictured, and this is how amazing it looks at night. And there's a lot of work going into these things of picking the right colors, or making it work in the space, and then this is how it looks during the day. And this is after the client promised you they're going to have a light-tight tent that's for sure 100% dark.
And they actually put trash bags inside there to make it even darker.
And yeah, so it's always a little tough. So then one way of going with it is try to throw money at it. And so we started with a really expensive daylight screen. And this, we put a picture on it, and it's completely white. But if this is in sun, completely white looks like this. And then it gets even more problematic when you put a white screen in a white box in front of the White House. And then the white doesn't look so white anymore with all the other white. And And then, of course, this is in direct sunlight. So the next idea is like, yeah, why don't we just put a shade on it? And even if you put a shade on it, it somewhat works. So here you can actually see this is like it in sunset. And these are 15,000. These are $15,000 screens, and you can barely see them. But compared to a normal TV, like in front of it are iPad Pros, and they're completely pitch black. So if this would be a normal screen, they would probably look really black in that picture too. And then you can just keep throwing money at it, and the next solution is, sure, you can use LED screens. And LED screens work in sunlight, but they're extremely expensive. And yeah, so like, you know, it's kind of like proven that it works in places like Times Square and such. But after all, if you don't have that, there's just at no point can you use projector during the sunlight, because there's just nothing that competes with the strength of the sun, because the sun is just really, really bright.
This is the elegant way that we discuss this with clients. Often we're telling them that the sun is just a burning ball of gas, and we're just not going to fuck with it.
Have respect.
So, you know, we can tell clients to basically put us in a light, tight box all the time. But of course, then you work in that box, and so we started to feel like this, always saying like, "Is there sunlight there? Because we don't want to go if there's sunlight." So it's crucial that like when you come up with ideas that you know that your ideas are going to define where you work for the next 3 months or 4 months. So we started thinking, maybe we need to come up with work with sunlight instead of compete with it. And we were looking at the transparent screens that were coming out, this new technology where they were using them as layers over products. It was mostly for commercial purposes, lit from behind in these light boxes, but the transparent screen is the front part, and it's providing this like animated layer to something. It's kind of a magic trick, but these are very expensive, and they come with the light boxes, but we thought maybe there's another use for them. I was looking at there's artist's work, Anila Aga, I don't actually know how to pronounce that, but she makes these hanging screens that are laser cut, and there's a light inside it, and it projects outwards. And she's using the light as like a filter, as like a stencil. So the light is coming out of it like a gobo, and we thought, like maybe we could do something like this, only animated using transparent screens. And we're also looking at stained glass, thinking that's another kind of like filter that's been done for hundreds of years, and it's this ancient art form. And wouldn't it be nice to add a layer to this like traditional experience? And we usually start these ideas with a sketch. The experience of just standing in front of something that looks like stained glass at first, and then it starts moving. That might be this just like beautiful moment, which we turn into style frames to try to like pitch this idea to companies to get people involved, and we sort of kind of like this was the sort of the hallmark of the experience that we wanted to make.
And we got really excited already when we saw this, but these are still comms. Like, we haven't done anything. We have no idea if this is working. We started pitching this kind of work without knowing if it was even possible. So the next thing we've done is you Google things, and then you just find almost everything on the internet these days. So we didn't invent this technology at all, but we took some old screens that we had laying around in the office and just broke them open. And then you take out that LED screen, whatever is still connected to it, to put it in a little box. And then there you have your transparent screen. And then with that, we just put it in the window in our office, and there's a little time window in the morning from like 11 to 12 when the sun shines in really nicely. And we took that and just made this. So it's a really nice, we just kind of experimented with the way of like how this can work. And you have to add smoke to it, of course, because only the smoke makes the light beams show up. And I think the light beams is actually what makes it the biggest difference to any kind of other screen, because you haven't seen this. Every screen is built the opposite way. We actually had this as a problem. When we first put them in the window, the light would come in and disperse immediately, like there was no light beam. And it was kind of like a funny coincidence, because first we taped the monitors into the window, and then we noticed that where the tape is, that's where the light beams came in. So the quick solution to this problem was we just taped the whole screen, and that was a layer that was added on top of that diffusion filter that was still on the screen, and it made the light beam show up. And then with the smoke, that was just like something that we haven't seen before, which we really liked.
And we were really excited about this prototype. I remember last year I even showed it in my presentation, because I was so excited. My presentation was about pinball, but I was showing this just because I was excited about it, and it had nothing to do with my talk. So then we started looking for, like, well, where could this go? It's in our office. It looks pretty cool in our office, but it needs to go out into the world, for somebody to experience it. And we started looking at skylights or warehouse windows, and where could this go? And it became kind of like an obsession, where I'd walk around spaces and like imagine, like, could it go here? Like, those ceilings are too high, and I'm at people's houses, like, having a good time, and then, my mind's like wandering, maybe that skylight would work.
And then, we kind of got a little crazy with it. We're like, how could we make this possible? And then we just like start sending out this video to everyone we knew. And then one client wrote us back that we worked with before, and it's like, you know what? We started talking to the MoMA in San Francisco. Maybe we should come out and like see if we could do something with it there. So they flew us out, and I saw this, and then we started dreaming really big. I was like, what if? Just think about it for a second. If there was stained glass window in the MoMA in San Francisco, and like all of these reflections there were animated, and and it didn't go anywhere.
No big deal. We'll just...
No big deal. But then it was like, okay. Actually, we only have these two little screens in the window. This is completely new technology.
You can do 600 screens.
Yeah. And then came FITC.
Yeah, so Sean had seen the prototype video and was really excited about it, and asked us to see if we could translate that into the titles, the identity, and an installation here for this year's FITC, and that he was going to build this theme step into the light surrounding what we were doing, which was really cool, really exciting. And I got really excited about it, and started like spinning all these ideas where we could have was like, oh, we could have somebody like running through the desert out in Marfa. We could build this greenhouse out there, and it would explode into light, and then we'd meet these like creatures out in the desert that would have like the stained glass on their faces, and it'd spell out the letters. They'd talk to each other.
I've heard this story for the first time last night.
Yeah, I didn't show anybody else that before, but that was one of my favorite discarded ideas. But yeah, we had to kind of take a moment. And if you saw Justin Cohn's talk yesterday about starting small, like, that's extremely good advice. So we took that moment to say, wait a minute, let's go back to why we were doing this in the first place, which was a sort of experience with stained glass, and for something like this where we don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars, like maybe what we just need to do is scale down and build a stained glass in a structure, in a box.
Yeah, and this is not a full room. Like, it looks like we didn't scale it down, but this is just like a small little box, 36 by 36 inches that we pictured. And then we bought a bunch of material, brought it back to the office, and then built this little box here.
So, well, we added these mirrors top and bottom to get that cathedral feel without the cathedral budget. And we knew that we were going to have to make posters and 16 by 9 video, and we needed something to increase the sort of scope of what we were making, even though it was just 4 screens. So, but since it's small, it was easy enough to make in the office. Just in a couple days. That's us starting to put the screens in. And then we went back to the inspiration, looking at classic stained glass and starting to get inspired by the shapes and forms. And of course, like Frank Lloyd Wright was a big one that was coming up, because here we are doing something with sunlight, and it makes sense to use an artist as inspiration that put his architecture in nature, like was interested in situating his architecture in harmony with nature. And here we're making something where we want digital technology to kind of feed off natural sunlight. So we made a comp quick to show to Sean, to be like, this is kind of what we want to make for the poster, more or less. That was the start of our design process. So we were ready to get out there and go try some stuff. We took that box from the office, we brought it out into the world, and it just kind of had this idea that we could just go out in a really sunny day, and this would be like this light gathering box, and we'd put it out there, and we'd get what we wanted. So this is just sitting in my backyard, and put the art onto the screens. And of course, a lot of this stuff should have been obvious, but not to me anyway. They're transparent screens, so of course, if you have a green background, you're going to see green. So even I even tried to put like a white tarp out there on my lawn, which didn't work. So we started mounting the screens vertically, so that we could just use the sky as an actual light box, and then get beams from the sunlight.
But this is a small box, but it's not light. So when I see Zander do things like this, I'm sometimes get a little scared too. Like, it's not something that you carry around like with just one person. You need a couple of persons just to lift it.
Yes. So we built me a little like office out there. That's not me. That's Pedro. But we had the spot for the computer running all the screens, and then the camera is below, and you could lie under there and look straight up into the box. And we took some encouraging pictures. These weren't right yet, but it was starting to get better. We're starting to get that like sun, like brighter panels, and we noticed this like weird problem where this is all the same color palette, these all 4 screens, but the ones on the edges look completely different for some reason. And we were very, I had no idea why this was happening. And here's the answer. It's that sun trying to get you. So you got to watch out. Mark Wrigley actually explained more what was actually happening. I don't think I can really do it justice. Something about the spacing of the RGB pixels. But the solution was to just change the color palette to a simpler, more pure color palette that didn't mess with the LCDs. And so actually our colors for this whole scheme just came from the limitations that we had with sunlight, and simply adding those colors fixed the problem without any technical adjustments. And just in case you forgot, they're transparent. There's my head on the side there. One other weird thing that I wasn't prepared for was, this is looking into the mirror. So you have the real screens on the left, and I always thought that mirrors would duplicate your current content. It would be a mirror image of your content, but everything to the right is mirror. But you can't see a tree in the real screens, but you can see a tree through the mirror screens, and you can see the light, the yellow light on my house, and parts of my house on the right side, which I didn't. I can't. I don't know.
Yeah,
It hurts.
Part of what is your head when you see these endless mirrors is that what you usually have seen is when people put LEDs around it and then just like extends into infinity. But like then you just only see the LEDs. But then in this setup, it's just like things happen that you didn't expect or didn't think of ever.
So even with these struggles, I was really starting to love sunlight and the way that it changed the piece over time. So when we started getting really nice pictures out of the box, we turned them into posters that we were sending to FITC that became the identity of everything you see around here. Just in case you didn't realize, these are just photographs, and there's some retouching to get FITC to pop, but otherwise, they're very much like the photos that we were getting. But the great thing is that at different times of day, they would look different. And of course, there's different colors in here, but you get like maybe the afternoon sun would start to wash these light beams into the piece, and you have something that is not moving, but it's changing throughout the day because of the sun. So we start thinking, all right, we're working outside, and sun's awesome, but we still have the titles to make. So, but we were excited to shoot this video.
True.
But that box is really heavy, and yeah, rain happens, sun, clouds. It's kind of unpredictable. I started to stress out. We have this like big important video to make. How are we going to do this? There's too many variables. We gotta scale back. So I bring the box back to the studio, and got some help setting up some lights and try to simulate sunlight inside, and then we kind of had the freedom to start doing more tests in the studio as we're like moving into animation. We're figuring out how are we going to turn this stuff into animation, how are we going to let light in a way that is going to be compelling. And so we spent a day just throwing animations into these screens and watching with a very strong light from the outside, watching the effects of various techniques. Our friend Jonathan Karam, he's an awesome photographer. He was helping us out for this day, learning a lot about lights and setups and stuff for the studio. We were testing like how tiny the details could be, and would they show up, and really you just don't know what to expect until it goes into the box, because you start to see how light reacts. Those are some, like, we were going to work into some speaker names coming through the box for the titles. But we set out to do sunlight, right? And we're here in the studio, so that's not, some compromises are good. They keep the project going, and other ones really are detrimental. And really the only reason I was in the studio is because I was sort of chickening out about sunlight. So that means that we could scale down in a different way, maybe. So the box is really heavy. We need something that's more portable, flexible, something that I can experiment with. And I was looking at these, so go back to the inspiration, stained glass. But there are smaller things of stained glass. Usually, like in your parents' home, they might have like a stained glass hanging in a window, usually framed by wood. It's a nice thing. So we just started sketching out that stuff. We got our friends at Standard Transmission to build us some frames around these screens that are more portable and flexible. And this allowed us to just kind of have fun for a little bit. They were easily positionable. We could see how light was being cast design something, throw it on the screen, move it around to different lighting conditions. Again, we're trying speaker names, see if we could work that into the equation. Looking if we could use cast light to reveal certain speaker names, which might be kind of cool. Ultimately, since there were 60 names to work in, we decided not to put them on the screens in case we got one spelled wrong, and after weeks of shooting, rearranging names would become a logistical nightmare, considering that we have a pretty small team. So we opted to stick with the glass, stick with experimenting with animating the original material. And through these experiments, these became kind of lessons for us where when things started working, these became like themes of the ultimate video. So like starting with something that's familiar and comfortable and working with this until you're comfortable enough to move to the next step. But then when you're at the next step, knowing to push it outside, like taking it out into the world, and we started like trying these screens outside in nature and getting a little braver with where we could go, trying out, experimenting with how this works with different lighting conditions. And started to get some nice effects, and we're really liking this stuff. And it looks like really peaceful to be outside. Of course, a little behind the scenes, this is the actual sound of
there's no electricity.
Yeah, had to do a generator to be out there. So we're totally not harmony with nature, maybe. But anyway. Then there's a step in a project where you start to gain control over your new technique, and so where we were starting to really bend light and make it do what we wanted. I felt like that was like when we were getting the upper hand, getting confidence to really go for it. We got the box back into this. Now that we'd figured things out, we started shooting into the box again, and getting some really nice stuff, for which we were able to build up to over time. Like after a while, then we started throwing everything that we knew into this final piece, and this would be like the final FITC reveal, using everything that we'd kind of learned about this process. And that's sort of like thematically where the video came from. Is this moment of light when your idea and your newfound technique come together, and that's the process of like gaining control over your new ideas.
And yeah, we were debating if we're going to show the video or not, because it's going to be shown, I guess, at the end of everything. But I think you just said 20 minutes through what we talked, so you deserve it. the sound or the score was actually done by a small studio in Germany, and Simon flew all the way out here to just be here when we show it. I don't know where you are, but you should stand up. Yeah, where do we go with this? This is actually... Well, talk to us later, if you have millions of dollars. This is actually kind of like an untypical piece for us at the moment, because everything we're doing has been super interactive, and maybe in a different world we would have imagined somebody jumping through the glass instead of just looking at it. But we want to kind of like bring this back to into a world where this can exist within its surrounding. So we started thinking about how we can bring generative art into this, because for the reel it made sense that we animate everything linear, but then when you bring this into a window or like as an installation, it needs to be a little bit more interesting over a longer period of time. So when I first saw where Zander is going with his animations, I thought it's a little complicated to just simply redo this, but there's some really simple structure underneath it. It's just a grid and with really simple shapes on top of it. And what's really important is that we add these black lines around the shapes, because only the black lines make this look like a stained glass window. And then as kind of like a first step, I was able to just like mimic what he's been doing with adding simple instructions to it. So like take a couple of shapes, just 2 colors, and then tell this shape to either go up, down, left, or right, or change its size either in width or in height. And because I didn't want to stay there and like press buttons for it to do it, or I didn't want to completely randomize it, I was looking for some sort of simple input that makes us interesting, but is also could be part of the environment. So what felt the most natural to me was just to use sound, because I could use sound with just music and edit, but it also made it much simpler to kind of like use a microphone and just like see what's happening. So this was my first test with it. I used Simon's sound already, and to make this more interesting, I just started with a line of really small shapes, and then just watched and looked for what's happening. And this is actually the program that's running on top of the registration outside. Turn this down a little bit. Right, so you might have seen this the whole time, but it is actually controlled by the microphone. I first had this based on music that you didn't see, but it was way too fast, way too hectic, and then I just plugged in my headphones, and it felt much more natural to the space, because when people out there, it's a little bit more active, and when no one's out there, it's very quiet. And then this is also the same code base that's actually now running in the box that we built in this back room over there. And I invite you to come there and take a look if you haven't already. Take a picture of it, and I think if we go there after everything is done today, we can also invite you to come into the back and actually see the box and everything that's behind it. We showed it a couple of people, and everyone seemed excited about it.
So yeah, this is a really exciting part for us, because we're not done. We brought the first iteration of something that we can keep going on, and right now it kind of adapts to its environment in a very simple way, like listening either to music or to the chatter around FITC to make the shapes and colors. But we know where to take it from here, that we could basically keep going on this, and that's sort of a central theme for us, is to keep pushing things and never stop stopping.
Never.
Never ever stop stopping.
Or keep going.
Yes, keep going, in other words, if that's, yeah. So yeah, we're at a place where now we could actually take over a large window at an art gallery, or create a light tunnel at a festival where people could run through changing sunlight, or take over a space, bring it to life with light and color. These are the sort of the exciting things that I think that we weren't actually ready for before, but now we are.
So if you have the means to do that, please. Like, we're waiting. We're ready.
So yeah, like all of this came about because we were just really hating that sunlight all the time, and then we started to look at it a little bit closer, and that was kind of a watershed moment for us, really facing something that had bothered us for a long time, and that actually became a source of new ideas. And maybe there's our sort of parting thought here is that maybe there's something that's bothering you, or this thorn in your side when you're doing projects, and just know that you could actually look at that and reconceptualize how you're seeing that, and actually use it to create new ideas, and maybe turn it into something amazing.
And that's it.